Hey everybody, this is Donald Stuckey here again with Stuckey Media. Thank you for joining me again. We are doing another cosplay edit. Today we are editing two sets of 4 photos from the first set is Elizabeth from Seven Deadly Sins. The other one is Junko Enoshima, and both of these are shot with a friend of mine. I'll leave her name in the description because I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but I'll put it here on the screen and I'll leave links to our page. Make sure we support support everybody in the cosplay community. So let's get to doing some editing. So all of these were shot with the Sony a7R III. I used 2 types of lenses, the 85 1.4 size, and I use a 85 1.4 G Master lens, and so obviously the first thing with this image is that it is a little bit in shadow, so we're going to open that up a little bit here with the exposure. So obviously we don't want to go too much on it because the background will blow out on us. So in order to deal with that, what I like to do is to bring the highlights down and open up the shadows a little bit, and that gets about where I like to be at. Then we'll just play with the brightness a little bit more, and there we have our exposure. Taking a look at the differences between the two, we did a pretty good job there. So moving on with this image, obviously when you take away the shadow, you take away some of the blacks and in the image. So we're going to add some additional contrast. So I'm just going to adjust the shadows a little bit more and bring up the exposure a little bit more. Yep, I think we'll keep it right there. So we're going to darken, put in that contrast there. So go. I like to have texture in my images. If you've watched any of my past editing videos, I like my images to have texture in them, so I don't really like the whole plastic look that you often see in some cosplay images and in modeling images and in a lot of portraits for that matter. So this is just my way of helping to preserve that. So going on the face a little bit. I tinker around with the exposure a lot. So yeah, I think that is good right there. So kind of gives it some character. The other thing is I like vibrant colors on my shots. So the only real vibrant color is her lipstick, and we're just gonna punch that up. So there we go, right there. So we're gonna play around with some of the white balance just a little bit here. All right, play with it just a little bit more. Okay, all right, I think we have a good one there. So taking the look, we go from an image that was in heavy shadow to one that has some character in it. So a few other things that I want to do here is I like to enable the lens corrections, and you see that just takes care of some additional issues that I may have been having. I always like to put in the profile corrections so you can see the difference between the two. Sometimes often I find myself shooting shooting where the background is properly exposed and the subject is underexposed. And one of the reasons that you can do that is when you have, my camera, the files that come out of the A7R3 give you a nice bit of dynamic range. So you get a lot of room to work. And so that's why you can bring the image back a lot. And the other thing is that we also kept it at a fairly low ISO, at ISO 200. So you get a really nice looking image with low noise, and you can bring it back and make it look really nice. So probably the last thing I'm going to do with this image is I'm probably going to add just a little bit more black to it. Just to hit, because that show was, even though it was a fun show, it was kind of a little bit of a moody show as well. So, there we go. So here we go, a really beautiful image of Elizabeth from Seven Deadly Sins, the first one we're working on. So let's move on to the next one. So one of the things that you'll see with this image is there is some fairly heavy backlighting, and then the other thing is that it's a little bit tilted. So you kind of encounter this a lot when you're shooting with people. You just keep shooting, and sometimes a great image might have a few flaws. So first thing we're going to do with this is we're going to try to correct the horizon line just a tad bit here, and I think don't really need to go too dramatic on there. So that looks a whole lot better. So we have kind of a Rembrandt style lighting pattern on her face, where part of her face is in light and the other part is in shadow. So just like we did with the last image, we're going to bring down the highlights, and you see that immediately corrects a lot in the background. We're going to make the adjustment with the exposure, bring that up. That level looks good. We'll probably end up adjusting that a little bit more, but I don't think I'm going to have to do too much additional with that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in some black, make it nice and contrasting. So there we go. And then we're going to make some more adjustment to the exposure. I think I'm going to play with the shadows a tad bit, and there we go. It kind of opens her face up, and you can see what I'm talking about. We preserve that nice Rembrandt look on the face and adding a tad bit more exposure to the image. So the next thing we're going to do is, again, we're going to go back with our adding clarity and texture into the skin. Something that I like to do. I don't like to go too crazy on those. Just enough to make it look like the skin is real. Give it a little bit of that soft look, just a tad bit, not a lot. And so there we go. So obviously we're going to go down and we're going to add the profile corrections. So that looks good. I'm going to go back and add just a tad bit more on the blacks there. So now we're going to work with the color. So obviously we're going to start with the lipstick. Make that nice and saturated, nice and punchy color on the lipstick. And then the background, we have some green trees in the background that was blurred out. We shot this at 1/100th of a second, and our f-stop was at 2.2, so we get a nice blur here of trees in the background. So we're going to add a little bit of green to saturate those colors, have those pump up a little bit, and there we go. So taking a look, we go from this shot, we go from look at the before and after, and you can see how nicely it looks when we do that. And so I'm thinking that I really like what we have here, so I'm going to move on to the next image. So I posted a similar one like this on Instagram, and a lot of people actually really didn't like this shot, or a shot that was very similar to this, but the pose is kind of different for the one we're editing today. So, but the lighting and everything is the same. So we shot this one at we shot this at 1/160th of a second at f2.2 ISO 200. This is with the 85 G Master lens. So we can see that there's, again, that nice Rembrandt type lighting. And just a posing tip is that you can really get the light on that face in different situations just by having the model or your cosplayer or whoever you're shooting with simply turn their head. And you can create these without even using reflectors and things like that. Obviously, I could have used a reflector to bounce light in on the other side of the face, but the Rembrandt lighting does I really do like the way it looks. So here is kind of the same thing that we're going to do. The exposure looks actually very good, so I'm probably not going to add too much of that. We're going to start this time with the blacks and work our way and just kind of bounce around. So we have the exposure there. We got to change that. We're going to bring the highlights down, so you can see how the highlights, if we go too dramatic, will make the face look a little pale, but that is about where I think we want to keep that. So I'm going to back off the exposure just a tad bit. Yeah, there we go, right there. So same thing with the blacks. We're going to just going to continue to play with that a little bit. Nice and punchy there. We do our textures and our clarity, and you can just see how this image starts to take shape. This is sort of the same pattern that I follow with just about every kind of edit that I do. We like a nice contrasty image, and we like just to have some saturated colors and just to have those, just to have the image kind of pop out at you. So we're going to pump up that lipstick again, and just to be completely honest with you, I did not ask the cosplayer to put on this red lipstick. I thought that it would probably be a different type of like clear or neutral tone lipstick, but it's, it turned out very well. It just makes it really helped this cosplay pop out even more than what it would have. So we're in a park around a lot of greenish area, and so we're going to put some additional green in there as well, just to help give it a little bit more of a pop. Here we go, and put in our lens profile corrections, and that looks pretty good. So I like the way that looks. Take a look at our before and after, and again, very nice looking image. Just turns out extremely gorgeous. So I really like the way that this one looks. So let's move on to the next one. So here is Junko. Actually, you know what? I have my images in the wrong order. So because we did have one more that we're going to do. So here's another image. So with this pose, we just simply had her stand up, and we just had her be a little, just a little free. And I thought this one was a nice, cute pic. So kind of same thing that we're going to do. Bring down the highlights. This cosplayer has skin that's a bit more pale, so you have to be very careful. That's why we're bringing the highlights down, because they can really blow out the detail in her skin. And I like to preserve the skin texture as much as possible. And so when you have someone that has pale skin that is that's more pale, then you have to bring down the exposure. You either have to bring down the exposure. Usually you can correct it by bringing down the highlights. So we're going to make a few little adjustments to the exposure. That would be too much. I think there is pretty good. And then the other thing is, you really have to play off of their skin as well. So in this case, you can afford to go a little bit more contrastier than you normally would with an image. So make just the skin texture and clarity. So this looks very good right here. Just if we did nothing else, this looks very good. So I'm just going to jump over and do the profile corrections just so I don't forget. And again, we're just going to have that lipstick pop a little bit, have it pop some more. So we're going to make that adjustment. So you can see the change. We just really like that to pop out there. Here we go. And we're going to pop out the background again with the green, make that nice, a little bit more saturated. There we go. So this is your before and your after. So I mean, and additionally, if you want to, with this image, I can bring up the blues a little bit and try to give a little bit more blue into the eyes. Sometimes it can be a little hard to tell the subtle differences between the blue and the aqua. So sometimes it might be a good thing just to bring up both. But there you go. Nice image here. A little bit of correction, nothing crazy. There we go. Okay, so now we're moving on to Junko. And so one thing about Junko's character is this is more of a character that has a lot of attitude. So the colors should try and reflect that. So one of the probably unique things about this cosplay, about this particular cosplay, is the hair. The cosplayer really put in a whole lot of work on the wig. And so this is probably one of the best wig implementations that I've seen for this character. So here we're going to adjust the exposure. We're going to bring down the highlights. We got a lot of we got some dappled light on the image, but I think it's still pretty good. Play with the shadows a little bit. Our goal here is to make sure that that face is popping out as much as possible. It is not too much shadow. So I think that looks good. We'll make some adjustments to the clarity and the texture. And so again, we have a fair amount of red in the dress, in the lipstick. Even the hair has some implementations of red colors that are on the red wavelength. So we're going to play with that one. And again, this is one of those things where you have to be really careful that you want to try and preserve. So here we go. So let's take a look at our before and after and really focus on the red in the dress and other areas of the of this cosplay. So that looks pretty good. Brighten those reds up a bit, a little bit more saturation, even in the button, and definitely on the lips. So there we go. Pretty good. So the other thing that we can do is we can make adjustments in the greens as well. We can really make those to be nice and make it look really nice and saturated with the greens. So that image looks pretty good. Let's do a comparison in just a second, but let's put in our profile corrections first. Do our comparison, and this looks really good. So just from the face, scanning downward, you see we've made the corrections in a number of areas of the cosplay here. So I'm going to put in a little bit more of the blacks here. There we go. All right. Okay, it looks good. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This is a more of a close-up shot to this one. I'm still kind of unsure if the eyes are like tack sharp, but I think they're pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit this one. So first thing again is we're going to bring the highlights down in a significant way. Adjust the exposure. I'm not going to go too crazy on the exposure here. We don't want to hit the skin too bad. Then we're going to put in our blacks. There we go. Add our skin texture and clarity. Here we're going to go for bring the red out in the lipstick here. And I think the last thing I'm going to do, at least with saturation, is we're going to bring up the blues in the eyes. That's going to help them look a little bit sharper than what they might be. Yep. Okay. Now that looks, I actually really like the way that looks. Yeah. Put in our profile corrections. Oh yeah, that looks really good. That's a winner. That's a winning image right there. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Here we have a bit of a different pose. So a lot of, we went really nice and threw the background out, made the background look really nice. Going from, one thing I really like about the way the blurriness is working in the background is that you have a lot of light that's poking through the different leaves and things like that. So one of the things here is we want to start with the highlights again on this one, just to try and stabilize, just to try and rebalance the light again. We're going to add just a tad bit of light, not too much, and we're going to add some contrast here. And I'm probably going to go back on the exposure. Yeah, I think that is balance right there. Okay, so I'm going to put in our texture and clarity. Here we're gonna get those reds to pop. So this is all the way the other way if we wanted to desaturate the red, which might be an interesting look, but I like for the reds to be bright. Here we're going to also pop the green as well. We didn't do that in the last image, but here I think we're going to do hitting the wrong slider. So we're going to have the I'm going to pop the greens here as well. So let's see that. So that looks good. So we're going to compare. We can see how nice the greens look here. We brighten that up a lot more. Put in our profile corrections, and there's our finished image. Now there might be other things that people would like to do. I mean, you know, let's add a little bit of blue in the eyes, saturate those a little bit. But other than that, this is a winning image. So that looks pretty good. Going for our last one. This is a great looking image here. We put her up, we put the cosplayer up against a black gate. You know those gates that, you know, like those stores have, and they have those gates that come down where it's almost impossible to get in them once the gate is down because it covers up the whole entrance. That's what this one is similar. So here we already have a lot of good things here. There is a nice amount of contrast and light. You know, if I didn't do anything to this image, it would still be a very good one, but I'm just going to make it pop a little bit more. So increase the light, the exposure. Don't think I'm gonna mess with the shadows. We'll add a little bit more contrast to it. Let's see, texture, we got that locked in. Put in some reds here, brighten those up. And I think we're gonna adjust the yellow as well. The yellow in the police tape. And there we go. So looking at the before and after on this shot, you can see just not even a lot of work that was needed. Go and make sure that the profiles are in. Here we go. So there you go. A very nice looking image. Nice contrasty bright colors. So, well, there you have it. There are all of our images that we worked on today. Thanks for joining me for this edit. Please leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.